is a Windows desktop. So I've obviously already logged into Windows. I'm going to use SAP GUI to start with, just as an example, and I want to show my mobile phone screen. So let me just start this application up, which allows me to do a mobile phone screen share, and then you'll be able to see what happens on my phone. So if I start sharing, right, make it a bit smaller. Over here, move that out of the way. Right. So when I log onto this system, it's going to trigger an MFA challenge using Microsoft Entra MFA, which is the MFA product that I'm using. By the way, we also use other MFA products. Not all customers use Entra. You can use Ping ID, Okta, Duo, RSA, lots of different products out there that we support. So because we're using number matching in Entra, I'm having to enter that number on my phone. You can't see it because of the screen sharing, but now it's asking me for my fingerprint. If it was an iPhone, it would use face, but I've just pressed my finger on the fingerprint reader on my phone, and now it's successfully authenticating me, and I'm now logged in. So that's how a user would log into a SAP system if MFA was being triggered during the logon. And as you've heard from the previous previous slides in the presentation, we can check the authentication and whether to use single sign-on or multi-factor authentication during the logon or after the logon. So what I'm going to do now is to run a transaction SE16. And we have configured SecurityBridge to enforce multi-factor authentication when transactions like SE16 are being run. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to enter the number 38 because it's going to be a successful authentication. And now the SE16 transaction is executed. So that is step-up authentication. I logged into the system, and then I'm re-authentication. I'm stepping up to another authentication level when I perform an action. I guess another example, which is probably more common, is that you'd log into the system using single sign-on, and then when you actually run a transaction or perform an action after the login, then it would require MFA. That's probably an easier to understand example of step-up authentication. So there we go. I'm now in SE16, and I'm only able to run SE16 because I was required to use multi-factor authentication, and I was successful. I think maybe now I should hand over to Holger, who can show you what the policy looks like inside the security form that made all that happen.
Absolutely. And there we will also be able to see how dynamic this capability is. And I also like to complement what you just said, Tim, is the fact that we just want to make sure that when critical things happen or anomalies happen based on the profiling that we have in SecurityBridge, the user profiling that we have there, only then MFA or step-out authentication is triggered to make sure that we have the security in place when it's needed and not every time someone is doing something annoying the users and having a very bad user experience. So here you have the full configuration environment for SecurityBridge. Many things you can configure here. We focus today on just on the MFA part, and there are various policies that you can define. You can have various groups for various systems and so on and so forth. Just to show you the example that we just seen in Tim's demo, right? It's because we have configured these rules that look for certain transactions. And this is a very simple example. Now let's have a look and see what else can we configure here. And you see plenty of other scenarios that we can use here to create policies with, right? So imagine you have certain business functions configured in your GRC environment. We can read those and identify whether a user is still following his business function or he's deriving because he's doing now things he never did before. And these conditions can trigger an MFA, for example. We've seen before critical transactions, critical programs, but also things like, imagine a user didn't log in now for quite a while, or he's logging in outside his normal working hours. Why are we, or how are we knowing that? It's because we know user behavior. We are profiling the user, not to supervise them or whatever. We want to make sure that we understand their behavior, their normal behavior, and can initiate security measures whenever we see deviations from there, right? And we just look at very critical things. Think about certain very critical roles or profiles, or a user that has super rights. These are very, very critical accounts that you want to have special measures for, and also to understand the normal endpoints from where users connect to your SAP systems. Sometimes we already know that a certain terminal is suspicious, and we can then trigger MFA for that, right? And many other things as well. We will continue extending this list based on best practices, but also based on the feedback that we get in the market or from the market. And think about, we want to make sure that this system dynamically understands anomalies and understands deviations from normal behavior, and only then makes sure or challenges the user with an additional authentication or a re-authentication or whatever you want to configure there, including blocking that activity if the request is not performed in the expected way, right? So imagine Tim before was not able to insert or to the right number, right? Then he will not be able to perform that transaction. And this is what you want to make sure. And you can extend this to any other activities. Think about DLP scenarios where you want to make sure that data is not breached, data is not leaving your environment. You can use these capabilities for protecting your data against such malicious activities too.